everybody, and welcome to a special version of New Releases. I'm Taylor.
I'm Joy.
And instead of telling you books for the next month, we're going to go over our favorite books of 2022. We're going to start with our fiction choices and then move on to our nonfiction. Sounds good to you?
Sounds great.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so I'll go first. My first choice for fiction of 2022 is X by Davy Davis. It is officially the sunset of the American empire for Lee and many others like them. The U.S. has started to export people, a notice to people to ask if they will see themselves out before they are forced out of the country. At first, the removal was based on legality, but it has now come down to anyone who the government sees as undesirable. And I'll let your brain figure that one out for yourself. Lee, our main character, who by day works at a company that's going under, and by night, they're a sadist hunting for X, a mysterious woman set for exporting at the end of the month. Lee takes us on a journey through their past and present in their quest to find X before it's all too late. Written in a very interesting style, X doesn't have chapters, but instead, like I said, fluctuates between past and present. Full of mystery, pain, and suffering of the best kind, X is non-stop hit after hit. The New York Times described this book as lyrical and non-linear, with sentences that feel like carved obsidian, dark, sharp, and shiny.
Wow, I think I would love it. What is it you said about misery of the best kind?
Yes.
Okay, we're not in rom-com world here.
We are not in rom-com world here. We are dirty and gritty here.
Okay. Well, you never hear me review fiction, and I love fiction and always read more fiction than nonfiction over the course of any given year. But I don't consider myself a particular fan of historical fiction, which is why it surprises me that my two choices are both historical fiction, and my favorite book of the entire year is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Lucrezia de' Medici is just 13 years old when she is forced to marry Alfonso d'Este, Duke of Ferrara, and just 15 when she leaves her home and her illustrious family in Milan to join him. However reluctant, the precocious Lucrezia knows what is expected of her, and in the beginning, she is hopeful. Her new husband is considerate, even playful. It isn't long, however, before her independent nature and failure to promptly conceive a child, because you know that's her fault, reveal the cracks in an idyllic facade, and Lucrezia is assailed by a creeping sense of dread. Do her husband and his court cronies intend to kill her? The lineaments of this story may be familiar to those who have read Robert Browning's great narrative poem, My Last Duchess. Now it is the turn of Irish writer Maggie O'Farrell to put new flesh on the bones of an old tale. And that is fortunate for us because, as she previously demonstrated in her widely acclaimed novel Hamnet, set in Shakespearean England, O'Farrell paints worlds with words. As I was reading The Marriage Portrait, I felt as if I had stepped into a sunlit Italian landscape as painted by one of the Renaissance masters. Or that I might just round a dark corner and encounter a knife-wielding assassin skulking behind a dusty tapestry. But you may well ask, does the story end happily? Well, the real Lucrezia did indeed die very young, and for the past 400 years, the rumor that Alfonso had her poisoned has persisted. However, it is the prerogative of the historical novelist, as opposed to the historian, to use her imagination. And O'Farrell offers us an ending that is, you'll just have to read The Marriage Portrait to find out. But I suspect you won't be disappointed.
Okay. I will say, historical fiction's not one that I normally go for, but I trust you and I trust your recommendations.
I don't either, but when I do, I really do.
All right, so for my next fiction choice, I chose We Had to Remove This Post by Hannah Burbitz. Up until 16 months ago, Kaylee was a content moderator at Hexa, a company contracted by an unnamed social media platform to review posts for inappropriate content. Kaylee and her coworkers must view hundreds of disturbing posts and videos per day and accurately categorize and flag videos for removal according to the company's guidelines. While not all bad, Kaylee makes a small group of friends and even a girlfriend. But as Kaylee and her coworkers begin to internalize the horrors they see each day, the line between the virtual and physical world becomes nebulous. Coworkers mistake a roof repairman for a suicide jumper, try to contact users who live stream self-harm, and even join flat earther cults. Read as Kaylee and her coworkers slowly desensitize themselves into different kinds of violence and the impacts it has on one another. I'll have to say, this one is not for the faint of heart.
My next choice is also historical fiction, and again, that's unusual for me. It's Afterlives by Tanzanian writer and Nobel Prize winner Abdulrazak Gurnah. I decided to include Afterlives among my choices for 2022 almost as an afterthought. I finished reading the book a mere 2 weeks ago, but I enjoyed it so much it jumped right to the top of my list. The story is set between the First and Second World Wars in a bustling coastal town in what is now Tanzania, which at that time was governed first by Germany and later by England. There, the lives of 3 young people uprooted by poverty, illness, and war converge around the home of prosperous businessman Khalifa and his wife Ba Asha. Hamza is a child soldier, wounded both physically and emotionally by the brutality of colonial warfare. Ilyas, who had been kidnapped as a boy, then rescued and raised by a kindly German farmer, came seeking his orphaned sister Afaya, whose guardians had mistreated her. After Ilyas finds Afaya, he establishes a stable home for her with the support of Khalifa and his wife. But all are surprised when after World War I breaks out, he abruptly leaves his home to serve in the German military. When Ilyas fails to return home, it creates a wound that cannot heal and a mystery that will not be resolved until the end of the story. Gurnah never lets us forget that colonial power, whether wielded with cruelty or with subtlety, is always oppression, and colonialists, well-intentioned or not, are always oppressors. But he also wants to let us know that this is not the whole story. The world Gurnah conjures is rich and diverse, incorporating strands of East Indian, Arab, and traditional culture, and peopled by a teeming cast of fully realized characters, major and minor, who eat, drink, joke, quarrel, worship, fall in love, make and lose money, and make, and sadly lose, sometimes, babies. There was something almost old-fashioned about Afterlives, a straightforward linear narrative with no time slips or fancy literary tricks. Gurnah's tone overall is quiet and compassionate. Love, loyalty, and friendship abound. His Nobel Prize for Literature, which was based on this book, is well-deserved.
Yeah, okay.
But I do want 2 things. One is there's a wonderful love story embedded in this novel. So I'm not entirely opposed to romance. And number 2, don't get me wrong, I love time slips and literary tricks. Just this book does not contain
Any of that.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think those sound like some pretty solid fiction choices. Shall we move on to our nonfiction?
Let's move on to the nonfiction.
Okay. So I'll keep the train rolling. For this next one, I chose I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Okay, I know some people will say, Taylor, how could you recommend a book with such a dark title? Easy, it's a good read. Jennette McCurdy may be a familiar name, as she was a child actor featured on Nickelodeon's iCarly and Sam and Cat. For millennials like myself, this was a long-awaited book. This memoir chronicles her turbulent family life, the start of her acting career, and a slew of issues that arose from it. Jennette is brutally honest about her struggles with mental health, religion, eating disorders, and family life. While I will say this book is very dark, it is very heavy. It is good to know that recently in an interview on WBUR, Jennette McCurdy said, "If I could have shown myself where I am now, I would not have believed it when I was little. I would have just screamed with joy. I would have been so thrilled, and I think I would have had really something to believe in. A much needed dose of hope and optimism. I'm thriving." So don't worry, everybody. The story ends happy.
Well, I've been looking at that title because clearly it's arresting. And also I thought it might be my cup of tea. So
I think it's definitely up your alley. It is, although, like I said, very, very dark, it is very readable. Jeanette is clearly an actress before she is a novelist, and she does an amazing job at telling her story, as heartbreaking as it is.
Okay, I will pick that book up. My first choice for nonfiction, which is what you're used to from me, is Other Lands, A Journey Through the Earth's Extinct Worlds by Thomas Halliday. Interested in taking a winter cruise not only through space, but through time? I am, which is why I chose Other Lands as one of my favorite nonfiction titles of 2022. In this work, paleontologist Thomas Halliday takes us on a dizzying, kaleidoscopic journey back through the deep history of life on our planet, from the mammoth steppe of the last ice age to the emergence of multicellular organisms in the seas that covered the Earth 600,000 years ago. Along the way, we visit 16 fossil sites on all 7 continents, each representing a different, strange, and beautiful ecological landscape. This is the world that was. Over time, as the history of life on Earth rewinds, we watch in awe as species flourish, adapt to change, move, or go extinct, and as new ones arise to fill the niches left behind. Mountains rise and erode, oceans overflow and recede, land masses collide and drift apart. In lyrical prose and calling on impeccable scholarship, Halliday shares numerous stories of the weird and wonderful flora and fauna that once graced the land we now inhabit. Flying reptiles, giant penguins, the vast glass sponge reefs of the Jurassic. Halliday reminds us that life is both fragile and tenacious. Change is the only constant, and all life forms are impermanent. The Earth has endured from age to age. But Halliday asks, will our puny, late-arriving species be around to witness what happens next?
It's a great question.
I want to go on that cruise. But since I can't, I think we need more illustration. I wish every page had been illustrated. There are illustrations, but not enough. That's my only criticism. His descriptions are just beautiful. You'll never look at life quite the same way again.
All right. That's going on my list. All right. So for my final nonfiction choice, I have Before We Were Trans by Kit Hayam. The narrative around trans lives in contemporary media still lie within the binary. We are often told and shown stories of people who have transitioned perfectly into their gender, when for many that is not the case, nor do they want it to be. With so much variance in historical context being taken into consideration, Hayam tries to shed light on the history of being transgender. Academic in style, yet engaging and easy to follow, this is a great choice for those wanting to know more about trans history but don't know where to start. With a quick excerpt, to say sex and gender are both socially constructed isn't to say they're not real. Like other social constructs, including race, money, and crime, they have material and life-changing consequences for all of us. But it is to say there's no innate reason we have to think about them in the way we do. With a starred review from Kirkus, overall, the book will fascinate anyone interested in the subject that many readers likely misunderstand. A capable, worthy demonstration of how the history of disrupting the gender binary is as long as human history itself.
Interesting.
Yes.
It took me a long time to understand the distinction, and it shouldn't have been hard, between gender and sex.
Yes. And I think this book, for anyone else who might have that same kind of, not misunderstanding, but need of broadening,
yes,
this is the book.
Thank you.
This is a great choice.
Okay, thank you. Well, my last choice, now you didn't think you were going to get away without hearing about some true crime, right? That is one of my favorite genres. So my last choice is Rogues, True Stories of Grifters, Killers, Rebels, and Thieves by Patrick Radden Keefe. Come on, sit back, relax, grab a hot chocolate, and pick up a copy of Patrick Radden Keefe's 2022 title, Rogues. After all, can you think of a better way to enjoy the holidays than by immersing yourself in tales of, as promised, grifters, killers, rebels, and thieves? Keefe is best known for his book, Saying Nothing, the true story of a political motivated kidnapping and murder in Northern Ireland, and for Empire of Pain, which focuses on the role played by the Sackler family in the ongoing opioid crisis in the United States. Both books are essential choices for readers of contemporary nonfiction. However, both are also very long. And for those of you who would like to sample Keefe's work before making a full-on commitment, Rogues may be the book for you. All of the pieces included here were previously published in The New Yorker. All are either thought-provoking, entertaining, disturbing, infuriating, or in most cases, all of the above. It isn't easy to choose a favorite. Maybe it's Keefe's exploration of the upscale wine market, where rich people, very rich people, pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single bottle of wine of dubious provenance. I have to say, it's too bad they got scammed, but it's also hard for me to feel sorry for them. Maybe it's his chilling portrait of a charming, unapologetic international arms dealer, quite willing to trade with anyone. Or just maybe it's his profile of producer Mark Burnett, who enlisted a very wealthy New York City businessman, widely held to be something of a buffoon, to star in a new reality TV show, and inadvertently catapulted him into previously unimaginable political heights. Can anybody guess who that is? Actually, my favorite is probably Keefe's poignant account of his friendship with celebrity chef and traveler Anthony Bourdain, who took his own life in 2018. Bourdain was no grifter, no killer, no crook, but rebel and rogue, indeed he was. There is something for everyone in this compilation of little journalistic gems you pick.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every one of them has something to offer.
I think so. I normally don't like true crime because it is true, and that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
But I like this because it seems to not be too heavily murder focused.
There aren't that many murders, portrayed here. It's mostly various kinds of cons and, I don't know, Wall Street scandal. You'd probably
That kind of
like
stuff.
it. Yes.
Perfect. All right, now before we say goodbye, we're just going to go over our honorable mentions for the year 2022. Mine are Our Wives Under the Sea, Manhunt, Acts of Service, Dowry of Blood, and Book of Night.
This was a great year for fiction and, to a somewhat lesser extent nonfiction. So I have too many to mention, so I'm going to cherry pick a little. So some of my favorites are When Things Get Dark, How High We Go in the Dark, M, Son of the Century, The Babysitter, and The Lioness.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in 2023.
Very soon.
Very soon. Goodbye.
See you later, fellow readers.
Yay!
Don't you think that was fun?